Well, welcome back, friends. Another big hour of Friday Live here on this first Friday edition, February 4, 2022. I'm Jim.
And this is Cheryl. Welcome.
And we're looking forward to having you stay with us for the next hour. Another big hour coming up. We're going to begin with our gospel reading for this Sunday, which is the fifth Sunday in Ordinary Time. Then our good friend, Father Gary Koch, will give the reflection. And then later on, I'm excited about this author, Father Blake Britton, has written a book called Reclaiming Vatican II, What It Really Said, What It Means, and How It Calls Us to Renew the Church.
I think everybody you ask will have a different interpretation of Vatican II and what came out of it.
Yeah, so he's going to set us straight.
Yes.
Also, on your behalf, he's a classically trained opera singer, pianist, and organist.
Wow. And we only get him for 15 minutes?
We'll have to
I
invite
need
him
more
back.
than that.
He'll have a lot to say, I would imagine, about
And music was a
music.
big part of it.
Sure.
I mean, a very big part.
Sure. So that's coming up, and we hope you can stay with us, my friends. But we will begin with our gospel reading, one of my favorite gospels this Sunday, Duc in Altum, Put Out into the Deep.
Yes.
And then Father Gary will take us with the gospel reflection.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. While the crowd was pressing in on Jesus and listening to the word of God, he was standing by the lake of Gennesaret. He saw two boats there alongside the lake. The fishermen had disembarked and were washing their nets. Getting into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, he asked him to put out a short distance from the shore. Then he sat down and taught the crowds from the boat. After he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into deep water and lower your nets for a catch." Simon said in reply, "Master, we have worked hard all night and have caught nothing, but at your command I will lower the nets." When they had done this, they caught a great number of fish, and their nets were tearing. They signaled to their partners in the other boat to come help them. They came and filled both boats so that the boats were in danger of sinking. When Simon Peter saw this, he fell at the knees of Jesus and said, "Depart from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." For astonishment at the catch of fish they had made seized him and all those with him, and likewise James and John, the sons of Zebedee, who were partners of Simon. Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on you will be catching men." When they brought their boats to the shore, they left everything and followed him. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to
Praise
you, Lord Jesus Christ.
What looks like a casual encounter with a rabbi on the shores of the Sea of Galilee changes the life of a fisherman named Simon forever. Simon had heard this new rabbi sermonize at the synagogue in Capharnaum on the prior Sabbath. This rabbi even came to his home and cured his mother-in-law from a fever. A professional fisherman, Simon has a few partners and a nice business. They have been fishing all night long and have caught nothing. In a lake as large and as rife with stocked fish as was the Sea of Galilee at this time, this was a strange occurrence. We do not know what quota Simon needed to have in order to meet his payroll or fulfill his contracts. Like any businessman during a stressful period, Simon is a little on edge, and that comes across when the rabbi effectively commandeers his boat so that he can preach to the crowd gathered on the shore. After preaching, the rabbi tells him to put out again and merely drop his nets to the other side of the boat. It all seemed so futile to do. The rabbi was not a fisherman, he was a common laborer. Yet Simon has faith in this mysterious rabbi. So against what would make sense, he did as the rabbi instructed. A large catch of fish ensues. This scene has a remarkable parallel to the post-resurrection story in the Gospel according to St. John. Clearly there is an underlying connection between these two events. Upon coming out of the water with the large catch of fish, the response of Simon to Jesus the rabbi is very clear and succinct. "Depart from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." In our first reading, the prophet Isaiah, a professional court prophet, undergoes a dramatic experience of conversion at some point within his own ministry. There Isaiah, swept up into the heavenly liturgical assembly, recognizes his own sinfulness and unworthiness. This level of awareness on the part of the prophet and the future apostle offers us a very important insight as we go about the day-to-day living of our lives as disciples of Jesus Christ. It is easy, perhaps all too easy, to forget that we are sinful people. True, we might go to Mass every Sunday and perform acts of prayer and charity, and be for the world good examples of Christian and Catholic living. But if we fail to be in touch with the deepest aspects of our humanity, then we are merely mouthing words and going through actions. Perhaps we have not heard much about sin recently. For many, when they hear talk about sin, they revert back to a prior time in the life of the Church when we seemed too obsessed with sin, and that we lacked a sense of redemption and God's mercy. As Catholics, we need to form a healthy balance between these two extremes. In a sense, we need to recover our Catholic roots so that we might more completely experience the beauty of what the faith offers to us. We are sinners. It is part of our daily experience. While it is true that our sins are forgiven in the act of Jesus' death and resurrection, it does not mean that we are no longer culpable for the actions of our daily lives. It is also likely true for most of us that we are not regularly serious sinners. We are more likely to be guilty of sins of omission than of commission, and are more generally thoughtless than thoughtful. Perhaps this is likely true. We are less likely to give our sinfulness any mind. Consciously or subconsciously, directly or indirectly, we push back. Knowing we are in the presence of a God who loves us and calls us to perfection, these pesky sins which we ignore become stumbling blocks for us. Like Simon Peter, many of us prefer that Jesus leaves us alone. Let us put off talk of sin for another time and another place. Sooner or later, those times and places run out, and we are left alone, one-on-one with the God whom we have avoided. Ours is a God who loves us and calls us to perfection and holiness. It is a time to open our arms and to come back to communion with God in the sacrament of reconciliation. It is only when we recognize our sinfulness that true discipleship can begin.
You have come to the seashore, neither searching for the rich nor the wise, desiring only that I should follow. Oh Lord, with your eyes set upon me, gently smiling, you have spoken my name. gently smiling, you have spoken my name. All I long for, I have found by the water. At your side, I will seek other shores.
Dreams of the Jersey Shore
I know. And
on a
Any-
cold, damn February day.
I know.
Before you know it, we'll be down there.
That's right.
And we have so many wonderful listeners in that part of the state. Although you were just saying on the break there that somewhere you saw a list of the places to retire to.
Right. In all of the United States, they listed in numerical order from the best place, which is Florida. They will accommodate the senior citizens in a grand style. And New Jersey was the absolute last one, bottom of the list. They just said it's not senior friendly. From everything from taxes, they tax your retirement
Yeah,
and,
tax your retirement.
and all that stuff, to just not much to do and not senior citizen friendly.
Yeah.
No entertainment or I don't
For
know.
seniors, you mean?
Yeah.
Well,
I
they
mean,
haven't
I don't
seen
know
they,
that-
me, haven't seen me and my big band yet. Coming
That's
at it.
right. I don't know that I would go that far, but you think of those retirement villages that in Florida, and they have all the activities for them and everything. I think they really win the prize,
Yeah.
as the Carolinas and some of those other states do. New Jersey already's been built up, and there's no place to add on, and
I mean, it is expensive.
very
That's
expensive.
just we compare because we live in Pennsylvania and we compare even just taxes to my siblings and just it's amazing the difference
Yeah,
just
property
across the
tax.
river. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Price of gasoline even.
Although out in the desert Southwest there's a lot of retirement. There's that Sun City.
All right, that must be towards the top of the list.
I would imagine.
Where they drive around in their little golf carts
Yeah.
and all the little shops for them and restaurants.
Remember when we lived out there, we visited your parents had a friend out there in Sun City.
Oh, that's right.
Remember we went to visit and in the community where they live in Sun City, it's like the Del Webb community or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I was very impressed that the houses all had a switch you can flick if you were in some kind of distress and your outside light would flash.
Would flicker, yes.
And it would let people know that you need help.
that you needed help. Like, I've fallen and I can't get
That's
up.
before all this technology. Now you have all the technology. You would need a flashing light
Sure.
on the outside of your house.
Yeah, but they really take care of them very well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then you think the weather changes, too. I mean, do we want to retire in New Jersey and risk slipping on the ice every year?
Nah.
No.
Although
So you go to those warmer climates.
Bruce and Linda, not that they're retired, but they are retired, but they moved up even to a snowier part, to the Rochester area.
You just
No,
have
yeah,
to
I've had
love
it with the snow and ice. I can't take it anymore. And it's funny because you get older and it's like I'm watching. Okay, is there a patch of ice where when you're younger you run and slide on it just on
And
purpose.
you know, silly, but even last night it was so damp and just this drizzle, and it wasn't freezing where I was. It wasn't freezing, but I was still, everything felt slippery, and it was just rain. But my shoes were just so wet, and I went into the church, and the lobby is a tile floor. I thought, I'm going to go sailing across this
Yeah,
narthex.
and the fear is greater. Although I was, I had my little. I have to get back on it after I had my surgery.
yeah,
I'll get back on my little device back there.
the balance
The
machine.
balance beam, it's like a balance board with from Bob Eubanks from the dating the Newlywed Game.
Right.
I saw it advertised, but they say when you're doing it teaches you how to your brain. I guess as you get older, your motor skills, your brain doesn't really function as well with your, it doesn't communicate well with when
Motor
you're
skills.
Yeah, your motor skills. And they say when you're doing this to look straight ahead. Don't look down because you will go where you're looking. So if you look down, you're inevitably going to go down for some reason.
The tendency is to fall.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's true or not. They said it on
Well, the
this.
good thing is, as you get older, you shrink a little bit, so you don't have as far to fall.
far to
You know,
fall.
I'm shorter.
That's right.
It's like, okay, it's not that far down to the floor now.
Yeah, yesterday when I had to go to my little checkup there at the doctor. and
Did they
it's-
take your height?
Yeah. I've got to
Did
be
you
taller than
challenge them?
5'6". I've got to be taller
That's
than
wrong. Measure it again.
5'6". I could play one of those dwarfs. if they're looking,
Oh, yeah.
if they're casting Snow
For
White,
Snow White, right? Yeah, we have to see what that
I could
outcome
be
is going to be.
grumpy. That's could be my part, grumpy.
What is the deal? It's politically incorrect to cast dwarves. Is that the argument?
Not really. We saw him. There was that one actor who is a dwarf, and you can say dwarf. I checked that. It's PC correct because dwarfism is a legitimate
Term.
condition. Yeah, but there were other dwarves that were complaining about him, saying, "Look, this is the only job we can get. Why take the jobs away from us?"
How many years do you wait for something?
Yeah, it's
like
a big
this?
break. You know, they're waiting for the big break. 7 of them.
Yeah.
And they're saying, why would we not want these jobs? I mean, they're made for us. It's perfect. We're
makes
perfect for the part.
It reminds me of when I was casting and producing a show, which I didn't do a lot of that, but this one school job I had in an elementary school, K through 8, and they wanted the Annie Jr., the
Yeah.
musical for the spring. And so you have to try to get the orphans, to look like orphans and choose those children that are going to fit. Well, there was an 8th grader who was probably as tall as you, if not taller. She was pushing 6 feet. A beautiful girl. She would have been a wonderful Cinderella or something, but she wanted to be Annie. And you couldn't have this towering Annie, the 8th grader. Whereas there was a very strong, talented 5th grader who was just a real spitfire and a spunky personality. She was perfect for it. But the other one, it was her 8th grade year. It was her last year in the school. She wanted the lead in the show. Well, I gave her who was the Miss Hannity,
Miss Hannigan.
and she
Hannigan, yeah.
did a fabulous job. And then later, she apologized because she really, writes a letter, and the parents have to come in, and oh my goodness, turned out great fun, but it was a challenge.
Yeah, when I directed plays in high school, that was not easy because when the casting list goes up, we would go hide
Oh yeah.
because
yeah.
people
This-
wouldn't. Inevitably, somebody's upset.
Oh
you know.
sure, not everyone. You
Yeah.
can't keep them all happy. Everybody wants
No.
a certain part.
I wonder how they work it out now. They being like everybody gets a reward of some kind. I remember I had a cast. We were doing the show George M. And the lead character, George M. Cohan, had to sing and had to dance and was a big part, major part. And there were 2 young men. And one young man I knew for many years because he had gone to the grammar school. And because I was a teacher, but I knew his family. And he had been taking dance lessons and singing lessons for years and years and years and years. But this other kid came out of the woodwork, and he blew me away. I mean, he was perfect. He was tap dancing. He was acting.
Oh my
he was,
goodness. Oh,
and
what do you do?
I cast him as the lead. And the next day, seriously, the next day, all 4 of my tires were flat.
What a coincidence.
It's amazing,
How did
isn't
that
it?
happen?
I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know. But
Oh,
yeah.
that's a tough
Yeah,
tough
it was-
spot.
it was a
Now, when our kids were in high school, do you remember they would double cast?
Yeah.
So you'd have cast A and cast B,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
1 and 2, whoever, and so more people would get. And then you take, what if that young man got sick or broke his ankle or some crazy thing?
Yeah.
You have a backup.
Well, that's what I remember when I was Tevye 50 years ago, and I would say to Father Corona, who was directing the play, we got up at St. Peter's, and I said, Father, what happens if I get sick? I mean, the part of Tevye carries. I mean, he's in every scene
The whole
almost.
show, yeah.
And he says, if you get sick, I'm taking you over to Dr. Santangelo's and fill you up with penicillin, and you'll be better in a day or 2. He said, you're going on stage.
Wow.
So,
Yeah, you
but you
couldn't-
take that chance. Never really.
Oh, sure.
If you can't double cast, you would just take it as we did.
And you run yourself into the ground because there's rehearsals almost every day. You're still keeping up with your schoolwork and your homework. Some kids even have a little part-time job. Everybody gets sick after the show. You close Sunday night, Sunday afternoon, Monday you get the day off from school, and Tuesday everybody's sick.
Yeah. Although, our production at St. Peter's High School in 1970 was fall of 72. We did at the high school, but it was so popular, and we packed the house every night
Aw.
that Father Corona arranged to do it at the State Theater in New Brunswick on whatever that, I forget the main street there, but that State Theater had been an old vaudeville theater.
Is that George Street, maybe?
Is it George Street or Albany? One of those, I don't know.
Yeah.
But and it was they were beginning to renovate it, and they were going to open it up. It hadn't been used for years, but it was a 2,000 seat theater. I mean, it was bigger than most. I think it was bigger than most theaters on Broadway.
Oh my.
And so Father arranged for us to do one performance at the State Theater, and
What a thrill.
leading up to that, I had some kind of cough. It wasn't COVID. It was 50 years ago, but I had some kind of cough that I could not get rid of, and I would start to cough, and I couldn't stop. And we're kind of getting closer to the show date, and I mean, thanks be to God, eventually it went away. But we were all getting scared because you take a breath, you start to cough.
Well,
But
that'd
I'm
be
sure it was
great.
run down. We were rehearsing all the time.
sure.
It was winter time, but I will say we packed the house. We
Fabulous.
filled that theater, and I'll never forget standing on stage all by myself with this big spotlight coming out of the
my.
balcony, singing "If I Were a Rich Man." What a thrill!
Were you nervous? Do you
No, I ate
remember?
it. I love that.
Yeah. Big ham.
I love that stuff.
What?
I ate it up. It was great. But I remember we were doing the L'chaim dance. We were singing L'chaim, and the men had a dance, and we would do those circle, put our arms around each other's shoulders and go in a circle. And at the end, to a life, and we all crashed down to the floor, and I landed on my elbow, and I thought my arm was broken. I thought, oh no.
Well, you went out with a bang.
It wasn't broken, but I really banged it up. And then my pal Peter, we're still best pals. He was in the show. He didn't go to St. Peter's, but he was in the show because he was a good dancer. So he went to St. Peter's Prep up in Jersey City, but
And he
Father
pulled him
Corona,
in.
he pulled him in. He said, "Come on, Peter, you can dance." And he did one of the bottle dances. But it was just before we were the curtain, the opening curtain, and I forgot my suspenders. So my pants weren't staying up. I said, Peter, please give me a belt or something. My pants are falling down. And so he gave me his belt. It was just funny stuff, You wish you could relive the whole thing, and it was just so much fun.
So much fun. You really built a family with your cast members.
Yeah.
And it was a great way to unify, at least, we used to have in high school 9 through 12. It wasn't like you did like the 12th grade play.
It was
right?
a senior
the
play.
senior
Yeah.
But we had incorporating all the grades. So it was a great way to, meet others and bond with kids in the other grade levels.
Now, I remember Father Corona, now he's Monsignor Corona. He's up in, I think, Plainfield or somewhere up there now, but in the Metuchen Diocese. But we would always begin the rehearsals. We'd pray to St. Genesius. And he'd lead us in prayer, which was nice because it incorporated, our faith into what we're doing. But
Right.
to do Fiddler on the Roof in a Catholic school, we were, if not the first, the second at least, company or school organization that did the play after it left Broadway.
Okay. Yeah.
And Jack Ellery, who was a broadcaster at WCTC in New Brunswick, since passed away, God rest his soul, but he was a Jewish man. And we invited him to come see the play. We thought it was a big deal, get the big radio guy to come see the play. And the next morning, he was talking about it on the air. And my mother recorded it on a little cassette tape, but he was saying, and Jack Ellery said, but the guy who's playing Tevye, if he's not Jewish, I don't know what.
Oh,
There you go. So my
Well,
Jewish
your
roots
roots.
came out.
that's right. If you really traced it way back. Talking about shows, if we have a moment, St. Luke Productions does stage plays about the saints, St. Faustina, Maximilian Kolbe, so many others. And the most recent one, the newest one, is Tolton, From Slave to a Priest. And I think for Black History Month, it's really being brought to the forefront, and it's going to be in our listening area in Philadelphia and Camden. So if you go to stlukeproductions.org, stlukeproductions.org, you can see where and when. There's 3 places: St. Timothy Church on Levick Street, that's Northeast Philadelphia, and Our Mother of Consolation, as well as the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception in Camden. So I would encourage anyone to go see that. The gentleman, Jim Cole, who plays Tolton, does a magnificent job. And of course, I'm promoting it because our son Anthony composed the score, the music, all the music you hear he penned. But there's props and lighting, and they have a screen. Not that they bring a lot of characters, but the other characters come to life, like Tolton's mother and the bishop, and they have a back screen where it's like a film, and the woman sings, and you feel like they're right there, but they're kind of like in his mind as he remembers. But I was just so impressed when I saw that a few years ago. So now that the pandemic is kind of behind us and they're getting out for live performances, they're doing several high school performances. They're going to go to Father Judge and Roman Catholic, but there are evening performances that last week of February, the 23rd, 25th, and 27th. So check it out and go online, and I really encourage you. And it's a free will offering. You don't even need a ticket. So please go support their fine work.
And the web address again is?
St. Luke Productions.
St. Luke Productions.
Yes. .org.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break, and then when we come back, we're going to be joined by Father Blake Britton and talk about his brand new book, Reclaiming Vatican II. What it really said, what it means, and how it calls us to renew the church. So you stay right where you are, my friends. We'll be right back with more Friday Live. And happy to have you here. Father Blake Britton serves as a parish priest and assistant vocations director in the Diocese of Orlando. He's a regular contributor to the Word on Fire Institute's blog and its Evangelization and Culture Journal. He also co-hosts the Boroughshire podcast. He's a classically trained opera singer, pianist, and organist, and is trained in classical Latin and biblical Greek. And in seminary, Father discovered the truth and beauty of the Second Vatican Council while he was there, and witnessed firsthand the power of its teaching in the life of his own parish. And in his brand new book, Reclaiming Vatican II, Father clears up misconceptions about the council and reveals how, when properly understood and applied, it fosters a rich experience of being in the church. We want to welcome to the program Father Blake Britton. Welcome, Father.
Thank you. Happy to be with you. And my mother is actually raised in Trenton, New Jersey, and I have a lot of family up there, so it's great to be with a radio station based out of that wonderful state.
There you go. And we're actually at our city of license is Trenton here, and so
wonderful.
Wonderful. So we'll hope.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, my mother's baptized right in downtown St. Mary Cathedral.
Oh,
sure.
Wonderful. Okay, well that's
Yes.
great. So we have that connection right away. Another connection we have that I'm sure we can get into a little bit. My wife, who's with me here, Cheryl, hosting the program with me, is also a classically trained pianist and organist at her parish and director of liturgy. So
we could talk for
Wow.
hours.
I'm sure we could.
Yes,
We could.
wonderful.
now, Father, I see your picture and I see you're a young man. I myself lived through the changes of Vatican II. I was in a Catholic grammar school from 1960 to 1968, and then at the Catholic high school. But I personally experienced what was going on at the time, and you know, my first sacraments were made in 1962. So by the mid-60s, everything began to change. And in your book, Reclaiming Vatican II, what really happened? What does it really say? How have we misinterpreted this in so many ways over these years?
In other words, have we gotten it wrong? Because the pendulum seemed to swing so far to the other side, and people went a little crazy, especially in some parishes more than others. So it's almost like we have to rope them back in. So what was the true intention of Vatican II?
Wonderful question, and that really does constitute the thesis of the whole text. Now, what I will preface this explanation with is this is actually quite typical in the history of the church, specifically after an ecumenical council. If you were to go back through church history, look at something like the Council of Trent, for example, things were not hunky-dory in the decades immediately following Trent. It took almost a century to go to full effect, and that's why you had saints like Charles Borromeo, Teresa of Avila later on in the post-Reformation period who really start working to solidify the vision of the Council of Trent. So we're still in that Goldilocks zone, if you will, in the Council of the Second Vatican, insofar as we're not there, we're not over the hill in the implementation phase. So with that in mind, we have to ask ourselves, what went wrong? What sort of happened? Of course, Vatican II itself is not the problem. Actually, Vatican II is a magnificent council filled with rich and deep theology. What really was problematic is what we call the implementation phase. And you can read the writings of St. John Paul II and Pope Benedict, just to name two of the most influential, but also other theologians that will give credence to what I'm about to say. But in this implementation phase, there were theologians who were either participants at the council or were outside of the council who were rather disappointed by Vatican II because in their mind it was not radical enough. They considered it a highly conservative council that did not go to the extremes they thought it should have. And so in the post-conciliar implementation phase, we're talking about mid-1960s to the early 1970s and on to the 80s, there was this attempt not to really implement Vatican II, but to implement their version of Vatican II, or what I think Vatican II should have been. Mm-hmm. This is what Henri de Lubac, who's a well-known French theologian, he dubbed it the para-council or the anti-council. So it was this fake narrative or this false narrative that masqueraded under the offices, that masqueraded under the authority of the Ecumenical Council, but did not authentically implement its vision. We saw that was radically done, of course, in the sacred liturgy when you had the suppression of Latin in different forms of the Mass, which was not asked for at all by Vatican II. And you can see it in lesser regards in other places, such as the decrease of emphasis on the sacrament of reconciliation, questions on human sexuality and contraception. There's a whole list of ways that the para-councils influence the current church. But that's the basic language and the basic problem that took place in the past 5 decades. And what my book is directly addressing is how can we educate ourselves on the Paracouncil and what can we do to reclaim the real dignity and beauty of the Second Vatican Council. Because one of the other fallouts of that, and I'll end with this, is that as a reaction to the paraconciliar agenda, there's now been a traditionalist response. So you have those who have been wounded by the paraconciliar agenda, and now they hate Vatican II, quote unquote, although it's not really Vatican II that they don't like. It's the false version of Vatican II that they've encountered. And now they're responding by sort of retreating to a pre-conciliar notion of the church.
And that, I think, Father, is the key. I remember our good friend of happy memory, Father Benedict Rochelle, one time said there's a specter out there known as the spirit of Vatican II.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right, exactly.
that phrase was used a lot to justify a lot of very odd interpretations, right?
Right, absolutely. That phrase, unfortunately, is one that was hijacked very quickly after the council, and you're absolutely correct. What it really speaks to is, why may I be doing what the council fathers asked, but I'm doing it in the same mindset? Well, the church isn't working on mindsets. The church works on hard evidence. It works on the documentations that she produces. And so when you start going to this experimental notion of implementing reform or theology, that can become very dangerous because you lose sight working with the magisterium and the Holy Spirit's vision. So you're absolutely right. That language of the spirit of Vatican II is not healthy language. It really should go back to what is Vatican II. And Pope Benedict will write about that extensively in a lot of his works.
And I know here our own bishop in Trenton, who has his own program here on our station once a month. I remember him saying to me, because I like to, on my program each day, occasionally I do like to read from the actual documents because people have to really hear what the documents actually say. But Bishop O'Connell told me one time, he said, traditionally, it's taken about 50 years, anytime there's been a council, taken about 50 years for the dust to settle, for people really to understand what it was about.
And that is absolutely correct. A very astute observation. I would say 50 years for the dust to settle, another 50 for it to be fully realized in most of its ways. And we see that within, the Council of Trent, Nicaea, Chalcedon, Ephesus, over and over again, because these are major themes that the church is dealing with. And I think it's important for us in a postmodern age when we're used to immediate gratification to realize that we're not going to have that with Vatican II because it's a historic movement of the church. That moves in epochs, not in decades.
We're talking with Father Blake Britton about his brand new book, Reclaiming Vatican II. It's published by Ave Maria Press, and of course their web address is avemariapress.com. Father, tell us a little bit about what's in the book. I see as you break it down some familiar the sacred liturgy, the church, divine revelation. These are all actual documents out of the council itself.
Yes. So what I do is in the first two chapters I address the paraconciliar questions elaborated on. And then I go into the four what is called dogmatic constitutions. So these are the four major constitutions of the church. Overall, there are 16 that the Vatican Council produced, but these four provide the foundations for the theology that's present in the others, as well as the theology that's now guiding the church into the third millennium. These four things are on the sacred liturgy, Sacrosanctum Concilium, Lumen Gentium on the church, Dei Verbum on divine revelation, specifically in tradition and scripture, and then finally Gaudium et Spes, which deals in the field of missionary and evangelical mission in the life of the church. So with that in mind, that logic, as I say, of Vatican II is very clear how the liturgy is the source and summit of our faith. This is everything has to be hinged. It is the primary responsibility of the church, to quote Vatican II directly in paragraph 10 and 11. So if the liturgy is not rooted, if it's not orthodox, if it's not pious in the proper sense, then we're not going to be focused as a church. That is our anchor, and Vatican II is adamant about that. Then flowing out of the liturgy, of course, is the identity of the church herself. This is the second major document, Lumen Gentium. Many will say that Lumen Gentium, and I agree, crowning jewel of Vatican II, it recultivates over 1,000 years worth of theological development that has somewhat been lost due to the fall of Rome in 476, the sack of the Turks in 1453, and then leading on to the 16th and 17th centuries. But all that to say, and I give more historical details in my book, that by the time we reached the 1900s, so the post-Enlightenment period, we had lost track of a lot of this original theology of the church that came specifically from the church fathers. Now, in the 2 centuries preceding Vatican II, we discover a lot of these texts and we recultivate them into the life of the church, and that gives birth to Lumen Gentium, which is not just, in my opinion, the most beautiful document of Vatican II, But I would say, as a church historian, as a theologian, it is one of the most beautiful documents ever produced by the Catholic Church in a 2,000-year history. It is an outstanding piece of text and a really rich theology. And then, of course, flowing from our identity of the church, the way that we revisit that identity is by reflecting on the scriptures and our tradition. And finally, if we are people rooted in the liturgy, we, from the liturgy, receive our identity. We reflect on that identity with the wisdom of divine revelation. Then we're able to go out to convert the world. And this is the real purpose of Vatican II. A lot of people criticize it, saying that it was a New Agey kind of council. It was a very worldly council. On the contrary, Vatican II was very clear in saying that in a post-World War II world, in a world that's eaten up with secularism, socialism, communism, there was a need for the church to have a very strong voice to convert the world back to the kingship of Christ. And this is evidenced in Gaudium et Spes, paragraph 22, where it speaks about Christ as the center of all creation and all of reality. So overall, those are the themes that I go through my book. In the final chapter, I'll reflect on the question of what do we do now? How do we move forward?
Father, of course, I'm going to ask a musical question.
Of course.
And one of the big, I feel like, results of this spirit of Vatican II really affected the music and what we sing at Mass. And of course, if we are going to be rooted in that faithful tradition where our praise is directed to God, our praise and adoration is toward Jesus. And all of a sudden out grows this huge body of music where it almost turns it around and makes us, as the attendee, the participant, all of a sudden, I myself am the bread of life. All the focus has turned around to, here I am, Lord. Instead of focusing and directing to Jesus, we're talking about ourselves at Mass. Does that make sense?
Yes, you're absolutely correct. This is, again, one of the negative influences of the Paracouncil. What happened with the Paracouncil, in short, to put it very bluntly, is they want to treat Vatican II as year zero in the life of the church.
Yeah.
Almost as if, the 2,000 years prior did not really matter. Whereas the Vatican II documents themselves are very clear in saying that we are to build upon the liturgical patrimony we've already received. So we just can't go from Gregorian chant and polyphonic chant by Thomas Luis Victoria to praise and worship and our God is an awesome God. That is like a very big jump.
Right.
So where's the organic development there, and how do we continue the tradition? But along with that, of course, is a very negative theological emphasis, and that emphasis is on the community above and beyond divinity. Mm-hmm. And that cannot be the source of liturgy nor the source of sacred music. And I do have a whole section of this in my book about sacred music in particular. Yeah. The fact that our music, our architecture, and the paraconciliar influence and period really came to reflect an anthropocentric or egotistical notion of liturgy, as opposed to a divine and theocentric theological notion of liturgy. Thankfully, I think a lot of people are waking up to that and returning to these traditions that are tried and true in our faith.
I think you're right. There seems to be a tendency now to revert back to the tried and true traditional hymns, a little bit more pious. And again, we should be opening that window to heaven. We experience the divine liturgy. We should be getting a little peek beyond the veil into that heavenly space, rather than, aren't we great? We are one body. Look at us. We're communing here. You know
right.
What I'm saying. Yeah.
One of my least favorites, and I can go ahead and make this public knowledge. Typically, I try to hold these things close to the chest, but what the heck? There's this one song that I can't stand called "Sing a New Church into Being."
Oh,
sing a new church.
Yes, I know.
And I'm thinking, the theology of that song is the very definition of what's wrong with paraconciliar thought in general.
Right.
But just it's such a poisonous ethic to think that we somehow create the church or hold it into being. No, the Trinity holds the church in being. It's the apostolic succession, the magisterium. These are the things, the faith of our fathers, so to speak. And so these are the things that hold the church into being. But I agree with you 100%. We could talk about another 2 hours on those things.
I know.
The 1970s and 80s Catholic jukebox.
Oh.
But
I'll tell you, Father. Now,
we'll save that for another day.
Yes.
1970, I was a freshman in high school, and we had it was a Catholic high school. We had our our mass, and well, my goodness, we were singing "Let It Be" by the Beatles.
Oh my
Ay,
goodness.
ay,
So-
ay, ay.
I
Probably
know.
because Mother Mary spoke to me. I'm like, that's not
Right?
the Blessed Virgin Mary.
That's
I
right.
promise.
That's
There you
right.
go.
That's right. But you know, Father, one thing I was having a discussion with a friend of mine recently, and of course, we here at Domestic Church Media, Cheryl and I are the co-founders of this apostolate, and working, of course, with the bishop and getting our letter of approval and working with the church. But Vatican II really did empower the laity in many ways, and I think that's a great fruit. I told my friend, I said, if we didn't have Vatican II, we probably wouldn't have these Catholic radio stations run by lay people today, right?
Yep. So that is a huge point, and I'm happy you brought that up because what usually happens is because of that paraconciliar influence, we tend to focus on the negative fallout of that false narrative at the cost of really all the amazing things that Vatican II accomplished. You're hitting on one of the major things, which is in chapter 5 and 4, 5, and 6, actually, of Lumen Gentium that reflects on the universal call to holiness and going into the life of the laity, the relationship, the hierarchy in the church is its own people. The Catholic faith in its origins, in its apostolic origins, was quite collaborative in its uniqueness, cooperating between the laity and the clergy. Now, that doesn't mean the laity replaced the clergy, which was the paraconciliar notion that we all somehow consecrate the Eucharist, whatever that foolishness is. I'm not saying that. But I am saying that in the apostolic mode of church, which now going back to in this post-Christian world, it's going to necessitate a collaborative effort between the gifts and talents of the laity and the gifts and talents of the ordained ministers and consecrated ministers of the church. And Vatican II foresaw that, building on, by the way, a theology that was already being developed in the century preceding Vatican II, not least of which was through the Guild movements under Leo XIII, and then also going into Opus Dei and St. Jose Maria Escrivá. So we have inklings of the Holy Spirit planting seeds that will eventually bear full fruit in Vatican II. But you're absolutely right. Catholic radio stations, laity helping form married couples, a feeding of the poor, preaching the gospel, all these things are very important, and they're not anti-Catholic. They're actually very much a part of the original Catholic.
Well, sure, the priest, the bishop, they can't do it all. And we're trying to reach those people, the homebound, and oh my goodness, the list goes on forever. And we need the laity to be the hands and the feet, an extension
Yes.
of the priests and the sisters.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. And I've shared that multiple times when I travel and give talks, how, right, one of the projects I'm working on right now is that I'm doing video game commentaries through Word on Fire and the Word on Fire Institute. We have a new series out called God and Gaming. You should check it out. It's really fascinating. But I've spoken with some video game developers out in, Hollywood or different places. And I'll say that, I can't go to the video game industry design company and evangelize. I can't. That's not my mission. But they can. As lay people, they can influence that industry. And so my duty as a priest is to nourish them with orthodoxy, to nourish them with sacred liturgy, to nourish them with the sacrament and solemnity, and then they take that food and they're able to share the world.
Beautiful. Well, we've been talking with Father Blake Britton. The book is called Reclaiming Vatican II, a wonderful, wonderful book published by Ave Maria Press, and their address is avemariapress.com. Father Blake, my goodness, we so much appreciate this great work. Again, friends, the book is called Reclaiming Vatican II. So, Father, thanks for being with us today, and
We'll have to have you back.
Yeah.
Please, I'd be deeply honored, and thank you for the privilege of speaking to one of my home states.
There you go.
and especially the Diocese of Trenton. What a gift. So please extend my warm regards to your wonderful bishop and to all your constituents there. I'm praying for you.
Thank you,
you.
Father.
God bless you.
Have a great day.
God bless you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And friends, we'll be right back. Don't go away.
Father Benedict Groeschel.
There are legitimate differences of opinion in any religion. There are differences of opinion in Catholicism. But in Catholicism, you expect that people will take the teaching of its supreme authority seriously. To go diametrically opposed to those teachings is to not be a Catholic. Someone in the name of Catholicism is sponsoring the destruction of human life, lives of unborn children. And they got the name Catholic on the door. The highest authority in Catholicism and the encyclical Humanae Vitae, Evangelium Vitae, is absolutely clear that no Catholic can support abortion and that Catholics are responsible to take serious action against legalized abortion.
The leading Catholic voices are on EWTN Radio. Father Benedict Groeschel.
There are legitimate differences of opinion in any religion. There are differences of opinion in Catholicism. But in Catholicism, you expect that people will take the teaching of its supreme authority seriously. To go diametrically opposed to those teachings is to not be a Catholic. Someone in the name of Catholicism is sponsoring the destruction of human life, lives of unborn children. And they got the name Catholic on the door. The highest authority in Catholicism in the encyclical Humanae Vitae, Evangelium Vitae, is absolutely clear that no Catholic can support abortion and that Catholics are responsible to take serious action against legalized abortion.
The leading Catholic voices are on EWTN Radio.
We asked people all over America, what have you done for your marriage today?
Boy, I gave a huge hug this morning, like a really big squeeze that lasted forever, a great kiss. Those things are really important.
She got a really short haircut that she hated, and I wrote her a note and put it up on the mirror saying that she was a cute girl with cute hair.
What have I done for my marriage today?
We've actually organized a date night tonight.
What have I done for my marriage today?
Wow, that is a great question.
I took the baby while she worked.
I got up with the baby while he slept.
Yeah.
Today, I sent an email to my husband, and I said, "You rock."
Well, I've done today what I usually do, and that is obey.
I listened to my wife when we talked on the telephone today. She really likes it when I listen.
What have you done for your marriage today? Little things can make a big difference. For ideas, go to foryourmarriage.org, a message from the Catholic Communication Campaign.
Well, welcome back. And, next week is National Marriage Week. You know that?
A whole week, not just a day?
No, National Marriage Week.
Wow.
Bishop said. You can go to foryourmarriage.org. It's all there and all kinds of suggestions for doing things during National Marriage Week. You can sign up for all kinds of stuff. For exactly things there for dating and engaged couples. And the things for married life, they have Just Wait, a letter from a newlywed couple. 10 pointers for prayer. 25 ways to fight fair.
So we have to have 25 fights.
I guess. 25 ways to fight fair. Shouldn't it be fight fairly?
I would think that would be, grammatically correct. But there must be a way to
So anyway, it's all
have
there.
a difference of opinion and still remain civil.
Oh, sure. I remember our Holy Father, Pope Francis, would talk about throwing plates. Plates will fly, he said.
I never threw a plate at you.
Not at me.
No.
Nor have I thrown anything at you.
No.
But kisses. I'm just throwing kisses to you.
Throw hugs.
All right, well, we're going to go. So have a great weekend, friends. And thanks for being part of our Friday, our first Friday. And we'll be back next Friday. I'll be here on Tuesday, God willing. And
stay warm and dry.
see you next week.
Bye.